use this time to reflect upon the Lord's Supper. You know, one of the things that God expects of us as His children is to voluntarily do His service without grudgingly doing it. Being volunteers to do the will of God. Surrender our will to His will. Being able to do His work and willing to do His work at any time. And the very prime example of that was Jesus. And the example that He laid before us. You know, some people have the idea that Jesus went to the cross because He was forced to. He didn't want to, but He was forced to. But that is not true, and the Bible reflects that. Jesus voluntarily chose to die on the cross. Some people think He was crucified against His will, and you've probably heard that. But if you look at the New Testament and some of the writings that are given here, you can understand that Jesus voluntarily surrendered His all to the Father's will and went to the cross. John chapter 15 and verse 13, greater love has no man than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. What a friend we have in Jesus. Titus 2 verse 14, Jesus gave Himself for us that He might redeem us from every lawless deed and purify for Himself His own special people, zealous for good works. Some people may think Jesus was slain against His will, but consider the evidence that Jesus died voluntarily so He could save us. He repeatedly predicted His crucifixion, beginning in the book of Matthew in chapter 16 and verse 21, and there are other scriptures that we won't go into all of them, but this says, Jesus began to show to His disciples that He must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed and be raised the third day. He chose to go to Jerusalem knowing He would be slain. Matthew chapter 20, verses 17 and 18, Jesus told the apostles, "We are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be betrayed to the chief priests and to the scribes, and they will condemn Him to death and deliver Him to the Gentiles to mock and to scourge and crucify Him." So Jesus chose to go to Jerusalem even knowing that He would be crucified there. Jesus went to the Garden of Gethsemane knowing Judas would betray Him there. John chapter 13 and verse 21, Jesus predicted that one of the disciples would betray Him. Other accounts show He knew Judas would be the guilty one, yet He still proceeded to go to the very place where He knew the betrayal would occur. He prayed for the Father's will to be done. That's what we began talking about when we started looking at this morning. We should be all about voluntarily doing the Father's will. Not grudgingly doing it, but voluntarily doing it. He prayed, and we should pray, that the Lord's will be done through us, just like Christ did. He prayed for the Father's will to be done. Matthew 26 and verse 39, in Gethsemane He prayed, "O my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as You will." See, His human nature would have preferred avoiding the agony, and I'm sure of that. He knew what was before Him. Nevertheless, He was determined to do Father's will, just like we should be. He refused to be defended when He was arrested. Matthew chapter 26, verses 52 and 53. When Peter tried to defend Him, Jesus said, "Do you think that I cannot now pray to my Father, and He will provide me with more than 12 legions of angels?" We sing the song, He could have called 10,000 angels to destroy the world, set Him free, but He voluntarily died upon the cross. He didn't ask for the angels. He plainly stated that He gave His life of His own will. John chapter 10, verses 17 and 18, "I lay down my life that I may take it again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of myself. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it again." See, Jesus' death was not an unexpected change in God's plan. He was not compelled to die against his will. He knew all along what would happen, yet he deliberately proceeded into the very circumstances that he knew would lead to his death. You see, Jesus died for us. And we need to remember that this morning. Now, we take time to take the Lord's Supper, and Jesus told us, as often as you do this in remembrance of me. But as a Christian, not only do we remember him during the Lord's Supper, which we're going to reflect upon him and give him the honor that he deserves in taking this supper, but every day of our lives, may we remember what Jesus has done for us. When thoughts come in our head and we want to go with them that are sinful, our body is flesh wanting us to sin. Put this cross before you daily, and especially now as we take the Lord's Supper.